Imagine trying to navigate a vast and complicated world without a map. You may move forward, you may even reach places you never expected, but much of the journey will feel confusing and uncertain. This is exactly how many of us move through life when it comes to emotions. We feel things deeply, yet we often lack the language to understand what we are experiencing. Are we disappointed or devastated? Are we stressed, overwhelmed, or burned out? The difference matters more than we realize. In Atlas of the Heart, Brené Brown offers a powerful idea. If we can accurately name what we feel, we can better understand ourselves, connect with others more deeply, and ultimately live more meaningful lives. Her book becomes a guide, a map of human emotions, helping us navigate the complex landscape of feelings that shape every relationship, decision, and experience in our lives. The journey of the book begins with a fundamental realization that emotions are often misunderstood because most of us have a very limited emotional vocabulary. Research suggests that many people can identify only a handful of emotions beyond basic categories like happy, sad, angry, or scared. Yet the human emotional experience is far richer and more nuanced than those simple labels. Brown argues that without precise language for our feelings, we struggle to process them and communicate them effectively. When someone says they are stressed, that word could actually hide a wide range of emotional states: anxiety, overwhelm, frustration, fear, or even resentment. Each of these emotions requires a different response and understanding. To explore this complexity, Brown organizes emotional experiences into different clusters. One of the first clusters she explores is the group of emotions related to uncertainty. Life is filled with uncertainty, and our responses to it shape much of our behavior. Emotions like anxiety, worry, fear, and vulnerability often arise when we face unknown outcomes. Brown explains that vulnerability, in particular, is frequently misunderstood. Many people see vulnerability as weakness, yet it is actually the birthplace of courage, creativity, and connection. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we take emotional risks that open the door to authentic relationships and meaningful experiences. From uncertainty, the discussion moves toward emotions associated with comparison and self-perception. Feelings such as envy, jealousy, admiration, and resentment often emerge when we compare ourselves to others. Brown explains the subtle but important difference between envy and jealousy. Envy arises when we want something someone else has, while jealousy occurs when we fear losing something we already possess. These emotions are powerful forces in relationships and social dynamics. By recognizing and naming them accurately, we can respond more thoughtfully rather than allowing them to quietly damage our relationships or sense of self-worth. Another group of emotions explored in the book revolves around belonging and connection. Humans are social beings who deeply crave acceptance and community. Yet feelings like shame, humiliation, embarrassment, and self-consciousness can create powerful barriers to belonging. Brown has spent years researching shame, and she explains that shame is the intensely painful belief that we are fundamentally flawed and unworthy of love and connection. Unlike guilt, which focuses on behavior, I did something bad, shame focuses on identity, I am bad. This distinction is crucial because shame often leads people to hide, withdraw, or attack themselves emotionally. Understanding the difference between guilt and shame can help individuals take responsibility for mistakes without losing their sense of self-worth. As the emotional map expands, Brown also explores emotions connected to disappointment and loss. These feelings include regret, grief, despair, and heartbreak. Life inevitably brings moments of loss of relationships, opportunities, dreams, or expectations. Brown emphasizes that grief is not limited to the death of a loved one. We can grieve any meaningful loss, including the loss of a future we once imagined. When people deny or suppress grief, it tends to resurface in unexpected ways. Learning to acknowledge and process grief is essential for healing and growth. Closely related to grief are emotions tied to disappointment and unmet expectations. Many people struggle with disappointment because they equate it with failure or weakness. However, Brown explains that disappointment is a natural and even necessary emotional response when reality does not match our hopes. It is often a sign that something truly mattered to us. Rather than avoiding disappointment, we must learn how to sit with it, understand it, and allow it to teach us something about what we value. Another powerful emotional category discussed in the book involves emotions related to anger and frustration. Anger is often viewed negatively, but Brown explains that anger can serve as an important signal that something is wrong or unjust. The problem is not anger itself, but how we respond to it. When anger is suppressed, it can transform into resentment, bitterness, or passive aggression. When it is expressed without reflection, it can damage relationships. Healthy anger involves recognizing the emotion, understanding its cause, and channeling it into constructive action. The book also explores the emotional terrain of self-evaluation and identity. Feelings like pride, confidence, self-trust, and humility play a major role in how we see ourselves and how we interact with the world. Brown introduces the idea of grounded confidence, which is confidence rooted in self-awareness rather than ego. This type of confidence allows people to acknowledge their strengths without denying their imperfections. It also enables individuals to remain open to feedback and growth. One of the most uplifting sections of the book focuses on positive emotional experiences such as joy, gratitude, and contentment. While these emotions are generally seen as desirable, Brown highlights an interesting challenge that many people face with joy. Joy can make us feel vulnerable because when something wonderful happens, we often fear losing it. This phenomenon leads people to practice what Brown calls foreboding joy, where they quickly imagine worst-case scenarios as a way of protecting themselves from disappointment. Instead of fully embracing happiness, they brace themselves for potential loss. Brown argues that practicing gratitude is one of the most powerful ways to overcome this tendency and fully experience joy. Another important theme throughout the book is the concept of emotional granularity, the ability to identify and distinguish between subtle emotional experiences. Emotional granularity improves emotional regulation and communication. When we can precisely identify what we are feeling, we can respond more effectively rather than reacting impulsively. This skill strengthens relationships because it allows us to communicate our internal experiences more clearly to others. Brown also emphasizes that emotional literacy is not just a personal skill but a social one. When people develop the ability to understand and express emotions accurately, they create healthier environments in families, workplaces, and communities. Emotional literacy fosters empathy, reduces misunderstandings, and encourages meaningful conversations about difficult topics. The book ultimately suggests that emotions are not obstacles to overcome but valuable sources of information. Each emotion carries a message about our needs, values, and experiences. When we ignore or suppress emotions, we lose access to that information. By contrast, when we acknowledge and explore our feelings with curiosity rather than judgment, we gain insight into ourselves and others. Throughout the journey of Atlas of the Heart, Brown continually returns to the idea that language shapes experience. If we cannot name an emotion, it becomes difficult to process or share it. Expanding our emotional vocabulary allows us to better understand the complex landscape of our inner lives. It also makes it easier to connect with others, because meaningful relationships require honest emotional communication. Another powerful message in the book is that emotional understanding builds resilience. Life inevitably brings uncertainty, disappointment, and pain. People who can identify and process their emotions are better equipped to navigate these challenges. Instead of becoming overwhelmed or disconnected, they can move through difficult experiences with greater awareness and strength. The metaphor of an atlas runs throughout the book. Just as travelers rely on maps to explore unfamiliar territories, we need emotional maps to navigate the experiences that shape our lives. Brown's atlas does not promise to eliminate emotional struggles. Instead, it helps us recognize where we are, understand how we got there, and decide where we want to go next. By the time the journey through this emotional landscape concludes, one message becomes clear. Understanding emotions is one of the most powerful tools for building meaningful lives and relationships. When we learn to identify, understand, and communicate our feelings, we gain the ability to respond to life with greater clarity and compassion. Emotional awareness allows us to approach ourselves and others with curiosity rather than judgment, creating deeper connections and a stronger sense of belonging. Ultimately, Atlas of the Heart invites readers to become explorers of their own emotional world. It encourages us to move beyond simplistic labels and discover the rich complexity of human feelings. In doing so, we gain the courage to face vulnerability, the wisdom to process loss and disappointment, and the openness to experience joy fully. With a clearer emotional map in hand, we can navigate life with greater empathy, resilience, and authenticity. The greatest journeys are not always those that take us across continents. Sometimes they take us deep within ourselves. Atlas of the Heart shows that understanding emotions is not just a psychological exercise. It is a life skill that transforms how we connect, communicate, and grow. By learning the language of emotions, we gain the ability to navigate relationships more thoughtfully, face challenges with resilience, and embrace joy without fear. Brené Brown's message is simple yet profound. When we understand what we are feeling and why we are feeling it, we gain the power to live with greater authenticity, courage, and compassion. In many ways, the true destination of this emotional atlas is not mastery over feelings, but a deeper understanding of what it means to be human.